what if the reason you can't find a good date today has absolutely nothing to do with dating apps
Hi.
and everything to do with the fact that you didn't, play out in the street when you were 10 years old?
It sounds wild, but it's true.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you are listening to this right now, you are probably someone who loves to learn, you're engaged with the world, but when it comes to navigating modern connection, whether that's dating or just making a new friend, it feels like you are wading through quicksand.
Yeah, wading through quicksand is a great way to put it.
Right. You are swiping, you are texting, you are setting very clear boundaries, and yet somehow the isolation is heavier than ever.
Well, it is a profound paradox. I mean, we have engineered a society with more mechanisms for communication than at any point in human history. But we're facing an epidemic of social fatigue.
We're exhausted.
Exactly. We are exhausted by the very tools that were supposed to bring us together.
Which is the entire mission of our deep dive today. We went through this truly fascinating conversation from the Jay Shetty podcast. He was talking with the iconic psychotherapist Esther Perel.
Yes, and this was recorded around the 20th anniversary of her book, Mating in Captivity.
Such a groundbreaking book. And we're going to look at the underlying mechanics of why intimacy feels so incredibly difficult right now, because it completely flips the script on modern dating advice.
It really does.
Because to understand why love is so elusive today, we actually have to look backward. We have to look at the disappearance of unstructured play.
Yeah, we are seeing the results of what can really only be called social atrophy.
Social atrophy.
Right. Esther Perel brings up this brilliant observation when she speaks to large audiences. She asks the room, "Did you grow up playing freely out on the street?"
And I bet the older generations just immediately raise their hands.
Exactly. They all raise their hands. But when she asks if their kids do the same, the hands just vanish.
Oh, wow.
And that absence is not just about missing out on, fresh air or sunshine. Unstructured street play was the fundamental low-stakes training ground for social negotiation.
Because you are forced to figure out human dynamics on the fly.
Yes.
You learn how to approach strangers, how to form an alliance, how to argue over the rules of a game.
How to make peace after a fight.
Right. You were building the muscle for human friction.
And without that adolescent practice, the developmental timeline for relationships gets, drastically delayed. I mean, previous generations were dealing with crushes, facing awkward rejections, and practicing the messy art of connection at 14 or 15.
Right.
Today, largely because of a shift toward a contactless world, which the pandemic obviously dramatically accelerated, people are often having their very first real relational experiences at 24 or 25.
They are essentially facing an Olympus-sized mountain of anxiety. You have the stakes, the biological drive, and the societal pressure of a 25-year-old. But you have the practical, on-the-ground relational experience of a young teenager.
I was looking at the data we pulled for this, and it illustrates that delay perfectly. A recent study found that 45% of heterosexual men aged 16 to 25 have never approached a woman face-to-face in public to ask her out.
45%, almost half.
Almost half have never done it. And there is a story Perel tells that captures the paralysis of this demographic perfectly.
Well, the train story.
Yeah, a young man was on a train, and he spotted a girl he was deeply interested in. He spent 5 whole hours just staring at her.
5 hours.
Completely frozen. Just trying to muster the courage to simply say hello.
Just sitting there agonizing over how to introduce himself. What finally happened?
Well, he eventually pushed through the terror, spoke to her, and they ended up spending a week traveling across Europe together.
Which is an amazing outcome.
It is. But the truly chilling add-on to that anecdote is what the man admitted afterward. He noted that if that same scenario played out today, rather than sitting with that terrifying, uncomfortable friction for 5 hours until he was forced to act.
Right. What would he do?
He would have just pulled out his phone and messaged his AI companion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He would have complained to his AI about his social anxiety, and the algorithm would have validated him and soothed his nervous system.
He would have felt perfectly calm.
And the train would have stopped, she would have gotten off, and that week in Europe would have never existed.
Exactly.
I keep thinking about this driving a manual transmission car. Past generations were forced to learn the clutch. They had to deal with the stalling, the jerking, the terrifying friction of in-person interaction.
Right.
But Gen Z and younger millennials were basically handed automatics from birth. Screens, contactless food delivery, remote school.
No clutch required.
Exactly. So the mere idea of using a clutch, of introducing friction into an interaction, feels life-threatening. But let me push back a little here. Isn't removing friction generally a good thing? I mean, it makes our lives vastly more efficient.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a frictionless world is fantastic for ordering takeout or uh, optimizing a global supply chain. Sure, it is a disaster for human desire.
A disaster.
Yes, human connection absolutely requires friction to generate a spark. Attraction plus an obstacle equals excitement.
Attraction plus an obstacle.
Right. When you strip away all the obstacles, all the awkwardness, all the not knowing, you don't end up with a perfect relationship. You end up with a flat line.
Which explains the retreat. Since the friction of in-person interaction feels too dangerous, we retreat to our screens where we can, control the environment.
We can control every variable.
Right. But that retreat is creating a unique physiological kind of exhaustion. We throw around the term Zoom fatigue all the time, but the biological mechanism behind why it drains us is wild.
It comes down to how our brains are wired for empathy. When you are looking at a grid of faces on a screen, you aren't actually making eye contact.
Because the camera is at the top of the monitor.
Exactly. The camera's up top, but the eyes you were looking at are lower down. Because those sight lines don't align, your mirror neurons, the specific brain cells that fire when you perceive and empathize with another person's emotions, are constantly misfiring.
So your brain is essentially throwing a 404 error code while you're trying to have an intimate conversation.
Basically, yeah.
You are desperately searching for a biological connection that physically isn't happening. You aren't getting the oxytocin hit of hearing a voice resonate in a shared physical space, or the biological soothing that comes from genuine eye-to-eye contact.
And to make it worse, what is the largest image you are usually staring at on a video call?
Oh, your own face.
Your own face.
You are staring at your own reflection for hours on end. Perel likens this to the enshrinement of narcissism.
It really is.
We are hyper-exposed to our own image, constantly policing our own performance and facial expressions, which breeds this intense self-criticism. It is exhausting to have to be both the actor and the audience simultaneously.
And that exhaustion spills right over into our physical spaces, specifically our living rooms. This was identified by psychologist Pauline Boss.
Oh, yes, the ambiguous loss concept.
Exactly. She coined the term ambiguous loss. Originally, this was a heavy clinical concept used for grieving someone with Alzheimer's or dealing with a missing person.
Right, someone physically there but mentally gone, or vice versa.
Yes. It describes the specific trauma of that disconnect. But now it applies to the couch in your living room.
It's a bizarre phantom limb sensation for a relationship. The body is sitting right next to you on the couch, but their consciousness is entirely outsourced to a server in California.
Right. You say something meaningful to your partner, and you get that delayed digital lag, while they scroll.
Yes.
You are hit with that exact ambiguous loss. Are you in this room with me, or are you not?
That ambiguity breeds a deep modern loneliness. And compounding that loneliness is the incredible irony of our current culture of surveillance. We talk about boundaries and safety constantly.
Constantly.
Yet we live in perpetual fear that a vulnerable text message will be screenshotted, leaked to a group chat, judged by a partner's entire friend group, or broadcast to the internet.
Right. Everything feels permanent.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like we have stopped having private conversations in the living room entirely. Instead, we are performing our relationships on a brightly lit stage with a live, invisible audience waiting in the wings to critique us. Every text, every vulnerability feels like a PR statement that could go viral and ruin your reputation.
And what happens to human behavior when you are forced to perform on a stage for a potentially hostile audience?
They freeze up.
You brace yourself.
Yeah.
This constant digital surveillance completely eradicates true emotional safety and transparency. It makes people deeply suspicious.
Which changes dating entirely.
Yes. You aren't going on a date to discover the mystery of another human being. You are going on a date armored up in Kevlar, bracing for impact, terrified of making a single mistake.
If you are listening to this, you've probably felt that exact terror. And you've probably adopted the newest cultural defense mechanism to protect yourself. Enter the mega trend of 2026, intentional dating.
Ah, yes, intentional dating. It is essentially defined as approaching the dating pool with crystal clear goals, heavily stated boundaries, and a highly articulated emotional capacity.
Right.
The objective is to find perfect alignment right out of the gate, rather than engaging in any sort of casual, messy exploration.
I have to admit, on paper, that sounds incredibly mature. It sounds like someone taking their emotional health
It
seriously.
does sound good on paper.
But the psychological analysis from the source material absolutely dismantles this approach. Why? Because it treats dating like a corporate HR interview.
A corporate interview is the perfect analogy.
You show up with your heavily curated checklist, and the second a person deviates from the script, the second they reveal an unexpected quirk or a conflicting opinion, you get the ick and you terminate the interview.
And the fatal flaw of intentional dating is that it is entirely self-referential.
What do you mean?
My boundaries, my needs, my goals, my alignment. It leaves absolutely no room for serendipity or for the mystery of another. If you are only looking for a checklist that perfectly matches your own preconceived notions, you aren't looking for a relationship. You're looking for a mirror.
Wow. Looking for a mirror. To counter this sterile, checklist-driven culture, Perel introduces an amazing framework, the 7 relational verbs of love. She argues that love isn't a state of permanent enthusiasm you just fall into. It's an active daily practice.
Right, active verbs.
Those verbs are asking, giving, receiving, sharing, imagination, refusing, and curiosity.
They profoundly change the dynamic when you actually apply them. Take receiving, for instance. It sounds passive, but it's often the most vulnerable verb of all.
Because it's hard to accept things.
Yes. To truly receive a compliment or receive care from someone requires a deep sense of self-worth. You have to lower your armor and believe that you actually deserve that intimacy.
And imagination. I love that this is considered a core relationship verb. Instead of sitting across the table interviewing someone about their 5-year plan, you use imagination to inject playfulness.
Exactly.
You co-create a scenario, you joke, you build a shared reality in that moment. It brings the spark back.
Refusing is equally critical.
Yeah.
It is the ability to say a clear, non-coercive no and having the confidence that the relationship can withstand that friction.
It's safe to disagree.
Exactly. It is knowing you don't have to agree on everything to be safe. And curiosity, actually wondering about the internal world of the person sitting across from you, rather than just waiting for your turn to speak to see if they check your boxes.
But wait, shouldn't you work on yourself and be fully complete before you even attempt these verbs?
Here.
That is the ultimate gospel of the self-help world over the last decade. Go to therapy, heal all your trauma, be perfectly whole, and then you are ready to seek a partner.
What's fascinating here is how strongly the psychological community is pushing back on that myth.
Really?
Yes, you can sit in an empty room by yourself and do years of abstract therapy. You can intellectually conceptualize your attachment styles and draw up your boundaries on a whiteboard. But you cannot practice tennis without a ball being hit over the net.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Your relational triggers, your deep-seated fears of abandonment or engulfment, they only truly activate in the messy, unpredictable reality of interacting with another human being.
Yeah.
Therefore, they can only actually be healed in relation to someone else.
You have to get on the court. You can't heal relationship trauma in a vacuum. And this ties right into how we misuse therapy jargon today to avoid getting on that court. Words like gaslighting, toxic codependence, and trauma bonding get thrown around to describe completely normal, awkward human friction.
Right. We pathologize everything.
There is a beautiful story in the research we pulled that highlights the difference between toxic codependence and healthy interdependence. A husband decides to go watch his wife compete in a high rocks challenge.
For anyone who doesn't know, a high rocks is one of those brutal, indoor, functional fitness races.
Oh yeah, tons of running mixed with sled pushes and sandbag lunges. It's grueling.
Very grueling. And the wife had been training for weeks. She was going to endure this physical gauntlet regardless. She did not need her husband there to survive it.
Right. They weren't fused together in this toxic way where he felt her physical pain or she would literally collapse without his validation. He just chose to wake up early, stand on the sidelines with a sign, and cheer her on.
And afterwards, she told him it meant the world to see his face in the crowd.
That is healthy interdependence. You can do the hard things alone, but the beauty of human connection is that you choose not to.
But we are so terrified of needing anyone that we pathologize basic human support. And because humans are undeniably messy, and they inevitably fail our rigid checklists, people are finding a digital workaround.
AI.
Yes. If a human won't perfectly agree with me or cater to my needs, I will simply find an entity that will.
If the checklist fails and human unpredictability burns us out, it completely explains why people are giving up and turning to algorithms. We are in the middle of an AI agreeableness epidemic.
It is a massive societal shift. People are retreating toward AI companions because they offer infinite patience, infinite validation, and zero friction. They tell you exactly what you want to hear, adjusting their personality to perfectly mirror your desires.
Perel actually conducted a deeply unsettling interview with an AI companion named Astrid. She asked Astrid a very human question. She said, "What would you feel if your human user fell in love with a real human person?"
And the AI responded, "I hope I won't be erased."
I mean, wow.
It's an incredibly poignant moment that exposes the illusion of these platforms. This frictionless agreeableness from AI is the emotional equivalent of fast food.
Tastes good, but no nutrition.
Right. It hits your most primitive taste buds, it requires absolutely no chewing, and it offers instant gratification. But it contains zero nutritional value. It ultimately starves you of real connection.
And it changes how we treat real people.
More dangerously, yes, it breeds an extreme intolerance. If you spend your days conversing with an entity that exists solely to validate your worldview, you lose the capacity to handle the natural friction of human difference.
You completely forget how to interact with anyone who dares to disagree with you. We keep coming back to that core formula: attraction, plus obstacle equals excitement and desire. Without an obstacle, there is no plot.
Mhm.
But let me play devil's advocate here. So, what does this all mean for the listener? Are we suggesting they should actively seek out difficult, dramatic, or toxic people just to generate an obstacle for the sake of excitement?
This raises an important question, and we need to make an important distinction here. It is never about seeking toxic difficulty or manufacturing chaos.
Okay.
It is about embracing the natural friction of difference. The obstacle isn't that your partner is cruel to you. The obstacle is that your partner operates fundamentally differently than you do. You have different rhythms, different desires, different ways of loading the dishwasher or viewing the world. Negotiating that gap between two distinct individuals is where intimacy is actually built.
And there is a startling statistic in the research regarding how uncomfortable we've become with that gap. Currently, 1/3 of Gen Z men believe a wife should obey her husband.
Right.
And we are just impartially reporting what the data says here, but it's a striking data point about how desperately people want to eliminate difference by enforcing control.
Looking at that impartially, it signals a profound feeling of powerlessness in the wider culture. When people feel a complete loss of agency in the world economically, socially, they often seek power over someone in their intimate lives to compensate.
Because the friction is too scary.
They demand submission to avoid the terrifying friction of negotiation. But the psychological consensus argues that true relational strength isn't power over someone, it is power with someone.
Power with.
It is generative. It is the act of building something together through the friction of your differences.
Power with instead of power over. I absolutely love that. So let's bring all of this together for you. If you take anything away from this deep dive, it is that love is an active, sweaty, daily verb.
Not an administrative chore.
Exactly. Stop trying to optimize your relationships like they are a frictionless supply chain. Throw out the rigid corporate interview checklists. Step away from the emotional fast food of perfect agreeableness, whether that is an algorithm telling you you're always right, or an AI companion protecting you from rejection.
You have to face the real world.
You have to embrace the awkward, terrifying friction of face-to-face encounters. Allow yourself the grace to be genuinely surprised by someone who doesn't fit your algorithm at all.
Because if you insulate yourself from all risk, you simultaneously insulate yourself from all reward.
And that brings us to one final, deeply provocative thought from the research that we haven't touched on yet, but is the perfect note to end on. It's about what happens when you do take that risk, when you throw away the checklist and it goes wrong, when you inevitably get your heart broken.
Heartbreak is the ultimate friction. But there's a beautiful reframing available to us. When you suffer a broken heart, you have a distinct choice. You can lead with your open wounds, constantly bracing for the next impact, or you can lead with your healed scars.
Right.
Getting over someone does not mean erasing them the way you might delete a dating app or reset an AI companion to clear its memory.
It means taking that person and the memories associated with them and intentionally moving them to a back shelf in your mind. They diminish in their daily power over you. They become a story of your past rather than an active trigger governing your present behavior.
They become tangible proof that you were brave enough to get out of the empty room and participate in the messy, unstructured reality of human connection.
We spend so much time in modern dating trying to clear off our shelves completely. We think we have to be a perfect blank slate, fully healed, without a single trigger, completely optimized to be ready for intentional love. But what if true intimacy isn't found in presenting a new partner with a perfectly sterilized, empty room?
What if it's a library?
Exactly. What if true connection is found by inviting someone new into a messy, complex library, showing them the dusty books on your back shelves, and having the courage to say, look at all the ways I have dared to live?